Hey, welcome to the start of my reading vlog. In Canada, we are just heading into the Victoria Day long weekend, and I wanted to set up here beside my window so you can see just how truly gloomy and rainy things are right now. I think it's going to be a perfect weekend to just curl up inside and get some good reading done. Also, last month in April, I did a reading vlog during the Easter long weekend. Because I can't really go outside and see my friends and family on long weekends, I found it really motivating to give myself a reading challenge instead, so I still feel like I'm doing something special with my extra time off. So, what I thought I'd do this weekend is to have a little readathon in honor of the Asian Readathon that's happening throughout the month of May. This is a great readathon. I will link information about it down below. I participated more thoroughly last year, but this year I kind of have huge TBR plans for the month of June, so I didn't want to overcommit myself in May. So unfortunately, I won't entirely be reading Asian authors in the month of May, but I did think it could be fun to get through some shorter novellas that I have already on my TBR, and I'm going to try to read as many as I can in one weekend. So here is the stack that we're going to be looking at. Now, one thing that I think is really cool about the Asian Readathon is how the prompts are always trying to challenge you to try to read books from a great variety of perspectives and voices. So I will say one of the shortcomings about my pile is that there's not a lot of variety in terms of the nationalities of the authors, and aside from two of these books, all of these are by Japanese authors. So I do just want to clear that up from the start of this video. I am aware that I guess there's a bit of a bias in my reading that I tend to seek out Japanese fiction, but I didn't really want to go buying more books for this, and I can't use the library right now, so we're just working with what I already had. In terms of what I'd like to read this weekend, I have 8 novellas here with me. Today's Friday, but I will have 3 days off after today, so I kind of have to get through 2 novellas a day. Since they're all under 200 pages, that should be doable. So let's quickly go through this TBR, what I'm planning on reading. I'm going to save translator names will be linked down below. As well, I don't really know the plots of these books. I haven't read them yet. They're novellas, they're short. I like some surprise. So we won't talk too much about them yet, but I will tell you about them as I'm reading them. Alright, so the first one that I have is Gosh-Argo-Shar by Vivek Shanbhag, who is an Indian author. And this one seemed exciting to me because on the cover, Shanbhag is compared to an Indian Chekhov. The next one that I have is My Kind of Girl by Buddadeva Bose, and this author is Bengali. Then moving on to my large pile of Japanese novellas, I've got The Factory by Hiroko Oyamada. This is a relatively new translation. I think this just dropped this year. I've got a classic, Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. I feel like everyone who reads Japanese fiction recommends this and seems to love Banana Yoshimoto, and I've never read her before. And then I also have a new translation, and that is Life for Sale by Yukio Mishima. He's a really well-known Japanese author who I've never read before, and I think this is a weird place to start because this is apparently just a very strange tale, but of course strange is what brings me into the party, so looking forward to giving that one a try. And then my last 3 novellas are all by Murakami authors. So 2 of them are by Haruki Murakami. I've got Hear the Wind Sing and Pinball 1973, which I believe are 2 of his first novels or novellas. They're both quite short, so they're bound up together in this edition, and I'm curious to see what his style was like at the start of his career. And then I also have Audition by Ryu Murakami, who I haven't read, but this one just sounds like it could be messed up and a lot of fun. So those are books that I'm hoping to read this weekend. I actually haven't decided which one I want to pick up first, but I will update you again once I have started doing some reading. Hey there, it's now 9:30 on Friday night, and the good news is that I've finished my first novella for the weekend, but the bad news is it was terrible. So that one was Hear the Wind Sing by Haruki Murakami, and it was pretty unfortunate because in the introduction he basically talks about how he doesn't really see these novellas as good. He considers that his writing career officially starts with Wild Sheep Chase. I don't really think that he wanted these to be re-released in this English translation, so that is not a good sign when the author is not really hyped about their own works. And yeah, it just reads like some kind of really early, weird, rough draft, like someone trying to figure out writing, which is fine, but it did not make for a very cohesive or enjoyable reading experience. I will say that like his style is like very smooth, you know, it doesn't take much time or effort to get through one of his works, but it just really felt like nothing interesting happened, which is not great when you get through 100 pages. So the narrator is just kind of this like aimless 21-year-old kid who's just kind of like having his deep thoughts about life, his existential crisis, thinking about all the women that he's slept with, and he's starting to have a fling with this damaged but mysterious kind of girl, and yeah, it just wasn't compelling. It kind of reminded me of like a not great Kurt Vonnegut kind of story, because it was told in like these really short narrative chunks, these short chapters. Also, he writes about a fictional sci-fi author, and reflects on this author throughout the story, which I feel like is a real Vonnegut Kilgore Trout moment, but just none of it was like very successful. So unfortunately, this was not great, and there is still another novella in this bind-up, so I think I will still give Pinball a chance, just because I am interested in continuing to read on with his rat novels. I do want to read A Wild Sheep Chase at some point, so I feel like I have to finish this off, but I'm really not looking forward to it now, but at least, like, it can't be as bad as his first one, right? He had to have maybe learned something about plotting or writing between them, so hopefully we'll see. Hello again, welcome to Saturday. I'm filming at this unconventional angle to show you that I have some dogs with me. I think I forgot to mention this yesterday, but I am dog sitting this weekend, my parents' pugs, and they're getting very angry at me when I try to read outside. It's really nice, warm weather, and I would love to be outside reading, but the dogs are not happy with me, so I think I'll have to stay inside. It's already 3:30 in the afternoon, and I haven't done a lot of reading since I slept in this morning and had some errands to do in the afternoon, so hopefully this evening will be a better reading time for me. But I'm about a third of the way through The Factory, and I'm quite enjoying this one so far. We've been introduced to like 3 characters who are starting off new jobs. Right now in the story there are a lot of mysteries. We don't really know what's going on with this factory. It's not super unsettling yet, but I feel like it's going to be increasingly weird as I continue along. Aside from that, I am hoping to get to Gosh-Argo-Shar today. So those are my plans, and I will check in with you once I've finished a book again. Before I finish this clip, I thought I should introduce you to dog number 2. This is Banksy, and hopefully we'll get some more good pug footage as the weekend continues. So just a few seconds ago, I finished reading my second book for this readathon, and that was Gosh-Argo-Shar. I was really worried about how to pronounce this title, but then the character in the story revealed that this is a made-up phrase. So, you know, since it's not real words, I guess it doesn't really matter how I pronounce it. A cool thing about this book is that it was written in an Indian language called Kannada. I feel like I just want to pronounce it like Canada. I'm sure there's a better way to pronounce that. But what I liked the most about this novella is that, you know, it was short, but it was a really satisfying tale of family life, and I felt like it gave us a very well-rounded depiction of this family. Particularly, it explores how, since you grow up with your family and you know each other's history and you have all of these like shared inside stories and these kind of unwritten rules and conventions for your behavior, you kind of take all of those things for granted, and then when you bring an outsider into that dynamic, it can get really complex. So for the narrator of this story, he's still living at home with his parents. His uncle is basically the breadwinner of the family, and also his divorced sister is living with them. And then he gets married through an arranged marriage, and things get complicated when this new wife comes in and she doesn't really approve of this family, and yeah, things get difficult, and the narrator finds himself hiding out at this coffee shop every morning, trying to seek words of wisdom from the wise server who works there. So it was a really compelling story that I think did a great job of showing these complex ties that we have to our family and how we kind of internalize the weirdness of our own family. For a short book, it's only around 120 pages. I feel like this explored a lot of topics, and it did so in like this kind of fun, lighthearted way. Like you can tell that Vivek Shanbhag is just like a really good storyteller. It just felt engaging the whole time. So this was a great one. I'm so glad I picked it up this weekend. I definitely needed a pick-me-up after my first novella of the weekend wasn't so great. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. Now I'm going to go probably make myself a cup of some matcha green tea since the sun is setting and I think I need a bit more energy to push me through this night. And I'm going to be continuing to read The Factory, and I'm hoping to finish that one before I go to bed tonight. So I'm about halfway through The Factory now, and I thought I would just do a quick update before I go upstairs and change into my pajamas for the night. But I'm really liking this book so far. It is weird. So like I mentioned, it's following the perspectives of three characters. They're alternating chapters from their perspectives, and they're starting new jobs at this factory, and things are just getting increasingly weird and kind of unsettling. So like weird things are happening at the factory, but people are kind of trying to talk about it like it's not weird or like it's super normal. So for example, there is some kind of weird predator called the forest pantser who lurks around the forest outside of the factory, and he likes to run around and try to pull people's pants down. But instead of being like super concerned about it, people are just kind of like, well, he hasn't actually successfully pulled anyone's pants down, and he's not just attacking young women, like he seems to attack anyone indiscriminately, so I don't know, not a big deal. So like stuff like that is weird. Also, I learned about a new type of rodent called the koi poo, and apparently they're just like giant feral koi poo creatures running around the rivers and the forests around this factory too. And yeah, I wanted to look up this animal to see what it looked like, and at first maybe I'll put some pictures up beside me so you can see what I mean. But like at first I kind of thought, oh yeah, they're kind of cute, I can see it. But then I realized that they have these like horrific orange vibrant front teeth, so that's a sketchy detail. So yeah, I love books where I'm like feeling the vibe and enjoying the story. And also, one thing I feel like I have to mention about Japanese literature is like any references to food just makes me so hungry because so much Japanese food is like delicious. So in this book, we've already had some references to ramen and tonkatsu and sashimi, and reading all of that is making me really hungry, and I'm very sad because I have no access to anything like that right now in my house at 11 o'clock at night. So that is one of the risks of reading Japanese lit. But anyway, going great so far. I'll let you know how things work out once I'm finished. So I was probably like 3 pages away from finishing The Factory when the dogs woke up out of their dead sleep to start barking, which startled me for sure. But we've got some fireworks going pretty late into the night right now. I find like the May 2-4 is a weird weekend for fireworks because the holiday is technically on the Monday, but I feel like people don't really party on that day. So fireworks are just kind of sporadically taking place throughout the whole weekend, which, I don't know, I don't love to see it. This book, I really liked it. Now, the ending is cryptic, right? It leaves you with a lot of questions still. So there are, a lot of mysterious, weird things going on. I'm really interested in what this text has to say about the modern day workplace and how relevant our jobs are to our life and our satisfaction, and what kind of meaning we look for in our work, and whether our jobs are really offering us that kind of meaning anymore. In that way, it reminds me a lot of The Castle by Kafka, which I feel like also offers this like really cryptic workplace. In this case, the factory, it's not like an assembly line kind of factory, but it's much more like office-y type work. And a lot of the characters in here are doing these very mindless tasks, and they're often working with like little to no supervision. So there's like no real motivation for them to be excellent at what they're doing. And a lot of the time throughout the book, they're starting to wonder why they even exist. Why do they have this job? Why is someone paying them to do this brainless work that probably could be done by a machine? So they have a lot of these kind of questions, and you start to see how this kind of feeling of pervasive uselessness starts to weigh on their psyches, as well as you start seeing these other strange things that are happening. It seems like there's a real conflict between the environment of the factory and the natural world, which I thought was an interesting piece of commentary there, how the animals are behaving strangely in this environment. So it's kind of like nature is like having this weird reaction to this manufactured environment. So definitely a book with a lot going on. You know, it is slim, but it feels like there's just like a whole world in here, and I love to see that. So definitely one I'm going to keep thinking about, but this was a great book to read late into the night, and it's now midnight, and I'm still feeling like I might like to do some more reading tonight, so we'll see where that adventure takes me. Hey, so it's now Sunday afternoon, and I've got two extremely tired pugs with me today. They are having their afternoon nap, and I'm kind of tempted to join them, even though I haven't done that much reading yet today. Last night before I went to bed, I probably got through the halfway mark of Pinball, the second of the Haruki Murakami novellas I wanted to read this weekend. I think that it's better than Hear the Wind Sing, but I am still not convinced that I like it, so at this point I'm just going to try to power through this over the next 2 days, but still not loving this one. And then this morning I started reading Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, and I'm probably about 44 pages into this one, and I'm liking it so far. It has an interesting tone because it's very much about grief and characters who are going through difficult situations, but yet there's also this charm and this kind of quirkiness where they're noticing some beautiful things in life as well as sad things. So I'm kind of curious about that mix, and I'm interested in seeing where this story is going to go. And then I've been thinking about checking out Life for Sale by Yukio Mishima. And this one is one of the longer novellas that I have. This one is almost around 200 pages. So if I want to read the whole thing today, I probably should start making some progress soon. But I am really looking forward to this one. I'll let you know what I think about this one once I've started. So let's talk a bit about Life for Sale, since I'm at the halfway point of this book. It is a bizarre, darkly comic little tale, and one thing I found impressive about this book is that it just like starts. There is not a lot of exposition in this thing. Basically, the narrator tells us that he doesn't believe that life has any meaning. He's feeling very nihilistic and hopeless, and he decides that he doesn't want to live anymore. So he tries to kill himself, like right away on like page 3, and he's not successful, but he still doesn't want to stay alive. So he decides that he's going to put his life for sale so that other people can decide what he should do, and if he happens to die along the way, he doesn't really care. At this point in the book, 3 different people have tried to buy this man's life from him, and they've tried to get him to do these strange, often illegal tasks that really should result in his own death, and yet things just don't really work out the way that they're supposed to. So it's kind of funny just like watching to see how these stories work out, because it really should be this dangerous, impossible situation for the main character, and yet things just turn, and it still results in death and destruction, just not the way that you think it's going to. So I like that this book is kind of fast-paced, because he is just kind of going from job to job, and each of the jobs has been entertaining and interesting so far. The only thing I'm not loving about this book is how the main character is kind of this macho tough guy, and he's always trying to pick up women in a way that's like not really connected to the plot. It's just more like flexing to show that he's such a hyper-masculine creature and he's so good at picking up women, and he's always like observing whether a woman is attractive or not, and that's kind of how he decides her worth. So I'm not loving that side of the text, But aside from that, this has been a pretty fun ride so far. Although I am wondering if the story can keep up its momentum for another 100 pages, because I could see that this formula could get a bit repetitive, so I'm interested to see how the author is going to try to shake things up in the second half of the story. Hey there, so I just finished reading Life for Sale, and I can truly say that I am living my best life right now. So firstly, this book was really great, so that has put me in a good mood. Secondly, it is now pouring rain outside, and there's just nothing more comforting than being inside with the pugs and hearing the drizzling rain tapping against the window while I'm reading. And then thirdly, an unexpected bonus for the night was I just got to watch a really spectacular fireworks show. And I know that last night I was like complaining about the noise of fireworks that you hear throughout the whole long weekend, but I always do get just super thrilled when I do get to creep someone else's fireworks show, because I would never go to the trouble of doing that kind of thing, but they were just so vibrant and so easy for me to view from my living room. So I had a nice 10 minutes where I just like turned out my lights and just sat and watched these fireworks. And it was great timing because I had just finished Life for Sale, and this novel is so existential. And it is really all about how you go about living your life once you realize that life is meaningless. So I was kind of thinking about those themes of the meaninglessness of existence while watching these beautiful fireworks going off, and it kind of made me think about like the futility of it all, you know. And even though we are living in this time of struggle right now, there's still something that's kind of cool about people just doing something that is like pointlessly exuberant and beautiful and just putting these colors into the sky. Anyway, as you can probably tell, this book gave me a lot of things to think about, but I liked how, even though it's dealing with these heavy existentialist themes, it never really becomes weighed down by that, and it just continues to be fun and engaging the whole way through. Like, that's what this is all about. It has a very gripping story that is increasingly ridiculous. You know, the escapades that this character gets into are just wild. Like, they sound like completely far-fetched, but it still remains a fun story, and I was kind of surprised how I ended up caring for the character, and I did get nervous for what was going to happen to him, which I wouldn't have expected at the start of this, because, you know, he doesn't even care about himself, so why should we? But yeah, he got me good with this one. And I didn't plan on reading the whole second half in one sitting. I thought I would take some breaks and read some other things, but I couldn't put it down. I was very invested in the story, and I wanted to see how he would wrap it up. So overall, I think this novella was an excellent introduction to Mishima's work. I imagine it's probably lighter than some of his later stuff, but knowing what I do know about the author and his own death, I think the questions that he's grappling in this novella are things that he was personally grappling with himself. So it was fascinating to watch him play with these powerful themes while still maintaining this playful and engaging, well-plotted novel. So I would recommend this one if you're looking for something that is kind of fast-paced and totally ridiculous and weird, but that makes for a very thrilling reading experience. So it's now about 10 o'clock at night, and I have made plans with Taylor to watch a movie later tonight. So that means I have to really get to it. I'm hoping to finish Kitchen tonight, and if I have time, I would like to make some more progress with Pinball. So we'll see how that all goes when I update you again later. Taken over my reading chair for the night. Looks like I'm moving to the couch. Back for another update. I just finished Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, which makes me feel like I'm on a bit of a roll tonight. So this one was enjoyable. I liked it, and I thought it was really funny to read this one on the same day as Life for Sale, because I feel like they kind of have some similarities, but yet they're very opposite in terms of the message of the story and the tone, since both of them are kind of about confronting that life is maybe meaningless and unfair and difficult, but both main characters go about this confrontation in a really different way. In the Mishima novel, it's very much about just giving up on life and trying to actively seek a way out of it. To the protagonist in this book, that's kind of the courageous thing to do, because he thinks it's pointless to just continue to live when it's just kind of suffering. In Kitchen, we have a main character who's also experiencing a lot of grief. There are 2 points in the novel where she loses people who are incredibly close and important to her, and she's kind of forced to confront these feelings of, how can I continue to live? Like, she knows that she is so alone in the world, but yet she is someone who struggles through that and works on finding joy and finding a way to overcome her pain and to use it as a way to become stronger. So this one is definitely much more optimistic, where this one is really just about like, none of it matters. This one is making the argument that life does matter and it is really worthwhile to struggle through it. So this one, the story itself, Kitchen, I thought was really well done. It kind of bordered on the line of being a little bit too sentimental and saccharine for me, because even though it is dealing with grief, there are some really cutesy things that happen, but it didn't go too far over the line. I was still able to handle it, and you did really want to root for the main character. I also liked how food played an important role in the story, because I am also someone who, like, food is very deeply connected with emotion for me, so I could really connect to that aspect of the story. Also in this book, there's a companion story that is attached to Kitchen. It's called Moonlight Shadow. It's around 40 pages, and it deals with similar themes as Kitchen, but I just didn't like it nearly as much, so I kind of wish I had just stopped at Kitchen and left it there, because, that one left me with some feels that I felt like I didn't have the same authentic connection to Moonlight Shadow. That one did just kind of go a little bit past the line into saccharine territory. That one was a bit too sappy for me, and it was more like magical realist in style, in a way that just didn't work as well for me. So Kitchen was definitely the standout from here, and I'm glad that I finally checked this one out. I've been hearing about this for so many years. So yeah, pretty good reading night. Have gotten through 2 full novellas today. I'll probably talk to you again in the morning. See ya. Hey there, it's now Monday afternoon. Today feels like the real bonus day of the long weekend, because it feels like we should be back to work, but it's excellent to get another day to get some more reading done. We also got some good news in that we thought we would have to return the pugs today to my parents, but turns out their stay is being extended for a little bit, so that's really nice to get their company for another day. As for the reading, I did end up finishing Pinball 1973 last night before I went to bed, and that's the second of the 2 early Haruki Murakami novellas that have been published together in this bind-up, and I guess it was an improvement from the first one. I think Hear the Wind Sing was actively annoying me while I was reading it, whereas Pinball was just kind of boring. You can sort of see Murakami starting to get his style together in this novella. Definitely some of the magical realism elements that he would play with in his later works, he's starting to experiment with here. For example, there's a pivotal scene in this book where a character has a full-on conversation with the soul of a pinball machine. So we're definitely getting into some unconventional territory, but I just didn't feel like he had really found his groove yet for this book. So neither of these novellas really worked for me, and I think it didn't help this weekend because I'm reading so many other novellas. It just seems sad in comparison to those novellas that are just so compelling and have these really engaging characters and stories, and this one just didn't seem to have anything that strong going for it. So I would really only check this one out if you're a Murakami completionist and you want to see what his early voice was like. But he didn't seem to be one of those authors that was really jumping out of the gate with a super impressive style. Anyway, as for today, that means that I only have to get through 2 novellas, so I'm feeling optimistic I can finish everything. I'm already halfway through My Kind of Girl, and it's a pretty simple premise for this one. I can tell that it's some just good old-fashioned storytelling. It's about these 4 guys who are in quite a nightmarish situation in that they're stuck at this railway stop overnight, waiting for their train, which has been delayed, except it's winter, and they're just kind of stuck in this train shelter, and it's freezing cold, and they decide to just tell each other some stories about love while they're waiting to pass the night. So I'm finished 2 out of the 4 stories, and yeah, this is just kind of like melancholy but kind of tender. It's hard to imagine people today doing something like that. Like if you just had 4 dudes waiting for their train and just talking about these very tender, intimate moments of their life, I feel like it maybe wouldn't happen. But anyway, I'm enjoying this one. It is a very quick read. And then my last one for today is going to be Audition by Murakami, but I haven't started this one yet. This one is, again, on the longer side at 190 pages, but I have a feeling, I think this one's kind of like a thriller, so it should be a quick, fast-paced read. So I'll let you know what I think about this one once I get started. Hello again. I thought I would film my final vlog clip at the same place where we started back on Friday at my kitchen table, looking outside at a gloomy day. It was really not the finest weather this long weekend, but like I mentioned, we can't really have exciting plans anyway, so it made for a great reading weekend. And I ended up finishing both of these 2 novellas, which means that I got through my TBR of 8 novellas over the course of this weekend. So the first one I finished was Audition by Murakami, and this one was quite thrilling and difficult to put down. It was a fun book to just burn through in an afternoon. So it's basically about a man whose wife has died. He was really connected to her, and he had a son with her. And now the son's starting to grow up and he's feeling like maybe it's time to like find a new person and get married again. So instead of being a normal person and just like meeting people or like starting a dating profile, he decides to use his connections in the entertainment industry to set up this like fake audition for what the actresses would think would be a role in this TV documentary thing, and actually they're auditioning to see if he would be interested in marrying them. And then there's one lady that comes along and he's like so enchanted by her and he thinks that she is like so pure and innocent, but then everyone else is kind of getting these weird vibes about her, and you can kind of guess where that's going in a thriller. So the plotting in this didn't have a lot of big surprises. It felt kind of predictable where the story was going, and I feel like the author laid down the foreshadowing pretty heavily, so you could kind of tell what was going to be important later on. But still, I don't usually read thrillers, so it was kind of fun for me to like dive back into that genre. So I had fun with more of like the suspenseful first half than I necessarily did when everything started going to hell in the final quarter of this book. There were a few things that I didn't quite love about it. One of them was the way that the author wrote about children who have survived abuse. I felt like there was a lot of generalizations made in this text that I didn't feel like were necessary. I also didn't really appreciate how this author wrote about sex. I get that it's a thriller and it's supposed to be edgy, but I still felt like it was a bit too explicit in a way that just kind of felt gross. So, you know, sex scenes are never my favorite part of a book, but this one kind of stuck out as being like, ooh. So, you know, it was a fun plot and I liked trying out a thriller, but overall there were a few things that I didn't like that this book did, but it was still fun company for a rainy afternoon. And also, I was thinking about how the 2 Murakamis compared to each other, and I think that they share quite a few similarities. One of them that really jumped out to me was that they both enjoy referencing the Beatles and classical music, so lots of music name dropping in here, so I like to see that at least. And then the other book I read this afternoon was My Kind of Girl by Buddadeva Bose, and this one was just kind of short and sweet. I will say that this book will probably end up being pretty forgettable because, you know, it's just 4 guys like sharing these intimate stories from their lives about, you know, a love that has been lost. There's a real nostalgic feel to these stories. They're kind of how these moments from our youth impact us so deeply, but we keep trying to move on with our lives and not think about it. But then these guys get in this headspace where they are returning to those memories, and you can see all of that emotion is coming out in their retellings. So this was definitely crafted with care and well done. But love stories aren't really my thing. There has to be something going terribly wrong for me to really be compelled in a love story. So this text was perfectly fine, but I just feel like I didn't have a deeper connection with it, and I have the feeling that I'm going to forget about these stories within a few weeks, which isn't a great sign. So to wrap up for the video today, I thought I would go through all 8 of the books that I read in order of least favorite to favorite. So if you were looking for some recommendations for some Asian novellas, then you can see which ones I liked the best out of this experience. It has been kind of a whirlwind just trying to do this all in 4 days, but here are the rankings where they stand right now. So at the bottom of the pile, probably not surprised to see this. These are the two Haruki Murakami novellas that I read. Definitely Hear the Wind Sing was the worst one of the two, so that one's at the bottom of my list. And then Pinball 1973 is also spot number 7. It was slightly better, but still not great. Then I think for number 6, I'm going to put My Kind of Girl. Like I mentioned, it's fine, I just didn't really love it in a way that I wanted to. And then for slot number 5, I'm going to put Audition because it was a fun read, but there were a few things about it that just didn't sit well with me. And then for slot number 4, let's go with Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. The story, Kitchen itself, was my particular favorite. I thought that it was really warm and beautiful, and I had a strong emotional connection with it. But the second story in this collection just seemed kind of repetitive and not as wonderful, so that kind of lowered its value a little bit in my ranking system. But I'm still really glad I checked that one out. Then at number 3, I'm going to go with Gosh-Argo-Shar. This was just a really well-executed novella. Like, this was just some solid storytelling and character crafting. I loved getting this glimpse into the life of this family, and I thought the narrative voice was really warm and engaging, so this was a real win. And then for the last 2 novellas on my list, I really liked both of these, and it's hard to say which one I liked better. But at this point in time, I'm going to put The Factory in at number 2, because this book is just so strange and mysterious, and I was so engulfed in the atmosphere of it while I was reading, but it is a little bit cryptic and it doesn't give you the most satisfying of endings, but I still feel like there's a whole world in this text, and I know I'm gonna keep thinking about it, and I'm very excited to have discovered this author. I think New Directions will be publishing another English translation of one of her works sometime this year, so I will be looking out for that for sure. And then at the top of the list, I think we're going to go with Life for Sale by Yukio Mishima. Again, another author that I should have been reading all this time, but I'm glad that I finally checked him out. This book wins the slot for just being like the most satisfying of all of the novellas, because it had a plot that was zany but fun and engaging, but it also had so many heavy-duty themes that it was exploring. So I felt like this was just super solid for a novella because there was just so much going on in it, and again, it's another one that I'm going to keep thinking about long after I've read it, which is always wonderful. So that's it for all the books that I read for my mini Asian readathon long weekend. Hope you enjoyed watching it. I'm going to spend the rest of my night hanging out with the dogs, and finally going to satisfy my cravings and have some ramen. Honestly, so many of the Japanese novellas that I was reading mentioned food, which made me so hungry, and specifically ramen came up a lot. Even in one of the books that wasn't Japanese, there was a character named Ramen. So I was just thinking about ramen this whole time. So I'm finally gonna treat myself to some instant ramen this night, although I believe this is Korean, not Japanese, but still, it will do. So that's it for me. Thanks so much for checking out this reading vlog, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye.